If you dry these things out, they will shrivel and ultimately die. So it's not a desert cactus, it's a tropical cactus. But there are different varieties that bloom spring, summer, and throughout the warm season. Although they will have one big mass of flowers and then just kind of scatter flowers through the rest of the summer. But everybody buys Christmas cactus and thinks they're beautiful. These, if they happen to be in flower a month ago, we would have called them Easter cactus. Today we can call them Mother's Day cactus if you like. But I prefer just to think of them as spring and summer blooming. They make gorgeous hanging baskets. They make gorgeous pot plants. They are very cold sensitive. Do not leave these things out in freezing weather. But it's hard to argue with that kind of mass of flowers. And as a beautiful blooming pot plant to give somebody for Mother's Day, I think it's a great thing. But they're just, they are true cactus. They just are not a desert cactus. I think the only other thing that I really wanted to, well, I guess there are a couple of other things. Oh, wait a second. I did bring one more here that I forgot to talk about. This group of plants, they commonly call them Mandevillas, but some of them are Mandevillas, some of them are Diplodenias. And it used to be, we only got one or two varieties. The original one that was most commonly grown was a great big pink flower they called Alice DuPont. Then this one came along. This is probably Red Riding Hood. Yeah, Red Riding Hood, which is a little more compact, has a little bit smaller flower. But the Mandevillas are vining plants or, kind of vining bushy plants. Colors range from white to yellow to several shades of pink to pure bright red. And as a tropical vine, they are one of the most showy of the woodier vines. They're not nearly as woody as this, but they don't grow as profusely, and they probably don't flower as heavily. But it is a gorgeous flower, and they will produce these all summer long. Remember back when Van Archer was a councilman, he got one of these things, the big flower type, the Alice DuPont, put it in about a 14-inch pot, put a little trellis in it. I drove by one day and I think I counted 47 flowers, big pink flowers growing in a 10-inch pot. So they are very, very much worth growing if you have something for them to grow on. They're a little picky about watering. You want to keep them moist but not soggy wet. If you water them too much, they will die. If you let them dry out, they will die. But if you keep them with even moisture, they will grow and cover a trellis, and again, the flower colors are just so striking that as a tropical vine, I think the Mandevillas, have to be something that you consider growing. Outside, they may or may not overwinter. It's not usually the cold that kills them, but the cold will freeze the vine back, and if you go on with your usual watering, they're going to stay too wet and they're going to rot. So outside they usually die over the winter, but it's really from too much water usually rather than from the temperatures. But especially the red ones, it's hard to walk by the new red ones. They are just so striking. It's just the richest red. I mean, it makes your shirt look dull. It is such a bright colored flower. But Mandevillas are again another one that you really know about. One of them that just didn't get brought in. The Duranta, what we call the Brazilian sky flower. We've got hanging baskets of it up there and have some pots of it. It has a small flower that will be anywhere from white to lavender to purple. But they bloom in absolute profusion. They make a huge bush. Again, the problem has been that for many years the growers just didn't produce many of them. Now we've finally gotten them convinced what a good plant it is. We've had a couple of them planted along the far fence in the parking lot. By the end of the summer, they're usually about this tall. I would guess they easily have 5,000 flowers on each plant. In the fall, some of the butterflies that pass through, I know, I don't remember last fall, the fall before, these little yellow and orange butterflies just descended on it. And every time anybody drove by, it was like this puff of smoke with maybe 500 colorful butterflies coming up in the air off of them. But look at them up front, very trouble-free. I need pretty much all-day sun. But as a pot plant in the ground or even in a hanging basket, the Duranta are certainly worth growing. The other thing I'll mention, if you have room for it and if you like fragrance, some of the gingers, especially what they call the white butterfly ginger, are incredible plants. They're not in bloom yet. There's one right down toward the far end of that fence line. but they grow, it almost looks like bamboo. They come up with these tall canes, but then they produce these long pods that come and sort of arch out of the top, and then they just open up with flower after flower after flower. The white butterfly is the most common. There are some other colors out there now, and hopefully we'll have more of them by the end of the summer. But again, if you're looking for fragrance, we'll cut one of those kind of pods off of it and put in a vase in the office. And the whole place will just be perfumed with not as overpowering as your jasmine that you were talking about, but just a very, very pleasant aroma. At times, my former black lab would get into the cat food and, shall we say, had a little problem that created some odor problems around the nursery, and that would be the best way to put it. That's one of the greatest things. You could put one of those white butterfly ginger in there and totally wipe out any offensive smell that might be showing up from time to time. But if you've got room for it to grow, white butterfly ginger is a great plant. It's going to grow about this tall. It's going to start out in a clump about this big around. Next year the clump's going to be this big, and in 5 years it'll fill an area the size here in the middle of the seminar area.
It seems to go like a circle somehow.
It just,
each thing
yeah.
goes out. Yeah, I have one that I planted too close to my back door, and oh, my husband's constantly, I was given the root. My friend had said, well, this is ginger, you can either eat it or plant it. And I just planted it.
I don't think you'd find that one to be real tasty. There are a large number of different gingers. The one that I certainly enjoy when eating sushi. Yeah. And what you're eating when you eat ginger root is that rhizome. But I don't know of any real ornamental ones that have a good flavor to it.
Oh, I didn't try it.
That's most of what I want to say about tropicals. Any other plants you want to bring up, or anything you want to ask about any of these? Yes?
Yeah, I planted one of your durantas last year, and it's about 6 feet tall, but it's real strong and skinny. I had to stake it. It's not big and bushy.
Is it in full sun?
Sort of.
Sort of. If you had more sun, it would be bushier. If you want to prune it back some, you can make it branch out.
Well, it's blooming though.
Okay, just leave it alone. It will get somewhat fuller, but prune the tree, and you'll have more flowers on the duranta. Again, ours are sitting over there where they get that blasting sun most of the day, and they're very compact and full of blooms. Sunlight is what makes stems short and compact. There's a hormone in a stem that makes the cells stretch and elongate. That's a little bit of an oversimplification, but where you don't have as much light, the individual cells tend to stretch a little bit. The plants get what we refer to as leggy. It's also why plants bend toward the light. If you've got a stem here and the sun's hitting it from this side, sunlight breaks down this hormone, so the plants on the front side of the stem are going to be shorter. The cells on the front side of the stem are going to be shorter. The ones on the back side are going to be longer, so the plant's going to turn toward the light. If you could get it more light, it would be more compact. Yes?
I have a fishbone plant, and last year it bloomed, and I have no idea why it finally bloomed. I've had it for like 12 years, but I'd really like to make it do it again.
What kind of plant?
It's a fishbone. It has to be one of these tropical cactus kind of things. It's a cirrus, I think. Ultimately, is what it turns out to be.
Okay.
Any clues as to what I do to
Give it more sun.
It's sunburned. It can.
Well, let it get accustomed to it gradually. Even the night blooming cirrus and things like that, the most beautiful flowers will be on the plants that are sunburned. The more sun it gets, the more flowers.
I keep thinking, well, they're ugly plants to begin with, but I keep trimming off the sunburned parts because I think that they're dirty, too ugly.
Let it go, and you'll have more flowers.
Okay.
On your croton, I have one, but it's like lost a lot of leaves on the bottom, and I mean.
They're very susceptible to spider mites. Be sure you're spraying them with liquid seaweed. Be sure you're giving them plenty of light. If they lose leaves, it usually happens over the winters when they get slightly chilled. If you want to cut it back, you can certainly do so to make it branch out, or just give it time.